Have you ever opened the last book of the Bible, read a few pages about dragons, beasts with 7 heads, boiling oceans, and stars falling from the sky, and immediately closed it in a sheer panic? Have you ever started reading about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or the mysterious mark of the beast, only to feel your heart rate spike and your anxiety soar? If you have, take a deep breath, because you are definitely not alone. For so many of us, the book of Revelation feels like a terrifying horror movie, rather than a comforting message of hope. We often treat it like a forbidden haunted room in a grand house. We gladly spend our time in the cozy living room of the Psalms, we feast at the dining table of the Gospels, and we learn in the well-lit study of Paul's letters. But Revelation? That's the dark, creepy attic at the top of the stairs, where we don't dare tread without a flashlight and a heavy dose of courage. But what if I told you that this deeply misunderstood book was never intended to induce panic? What if I told you that it was actually written to bring you profound peace in an increasingly chaotic world? I remember when I first tried to read through Revelation as a teenager. I was sitting on my bed late at night, the only light in the room coming from a small bedside lamp. I was flipping through the thin, crinkling pages at the very back of my Bible, and honestly, I was terrified. I had grown up hearing all of the dramatic doomsday predictions on television. I had listened to late-night televangelists pointing to giant, confusing charts covered in timelines, arrows, and cryptic symbols. I had read the popular, scary, fictional books about the end of the world, where people vanished into thin air and those left behind had to navigate a dystopian nightmare of earthquakes and plagues. Because of all this cultural baggage, I thought Revelation was just a giant, terrifying puzzle designed by God to scare us into good behavior. I viewed it as a divine threat. Straighten up, or the locusts are coming for you. For years, I avoided it completely. I would happily read the comforting words of David in the Psalms, I would soak in the Sermon on the Mount, I would read about grace in Ephesians, but I skipped right over that final book. I lived with a quiet, lingering dread about the end of the world, hoping it simply wouldn't happen in my lifetime. A few years ago, however, something happened that changed how I see this final chapter of Scripture completely. I was going through an incredibly dark season in my life, where absolutely everything felt like it was spinning wildly out of control. It wasn't just a single bad day. It was a prolonged, heavy season of grief and instability. My physical health was failing, bringing a daily barrage of pain, doctor's appointments, and uncertainty. At the same time, my finances were an absolute mess, leaving me awake at night staring at the ceiling, wondering how I was going to keep the lights on and a roof over my head. And as if my personal world wasn't chaotic enough, the news on television only made my anxiety worse. Every time I turned on a screen, there were reports of wars, economic collapse, devastating diseases, and bitter societal division. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of bad news, both personal and global. In absolute desperation, seeking some kind of anchor in the storm, I sat down for coffee with an older, trusted mentor. I poured out my heart, my fears, and my overwhelming sense of dread about the future. He listened patiently, nodding gently as I spoke. When I finished, he didn't offer me a 5-step plan for financial freedom or a new medical diet. Instead, he gently slid his worn, leather-bound Bible across the table, tapped the back cover, and told me to read Revelation again. I looked at him like he had lost his mind. Read Revelation? I'm already terrified, and you want me to read about dragons and plagues? But then he gave me a piece of advice that shifted the ground beneath my feet. He said, this time, stop looking for a timeline of destruction and start looking for a picture of Jesus. That simple, profound shift changed everything for me. It took away the blinding fear and replaced it with a deep, unshakable comfort. I went home, opened the book, and realized that my mentor was absolutely right. The very first thing we have to understand is the actual title of the book. If you look at Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, it doesn't say the revelation of the Antichrist. It doesn't say the revelation of the end of the world. It says the revelation of Jesus Christ. The Greek word used there for revelation is *apocalypsis. Over the centuries, pop culture has hijacked the word apocalypse to mean the end of the world, nuclear fallout, or a dystopian wasteland. But in the original language of the New Testament, apocalypsis asterisk simply means an unveiling. It means to pull back the curtain. Imagine standing in a grand art gallery. In the center of the room is a massive, beautiful sculpture, but it is covered by a heavy, opaque velvet drape. You can't see the details. You can only see the vague, mysterious shape underneath. An apocalypsis is the moment the artist grabs the corner of the velvet drape and pulls it away, revealing the masterpiece in all its glory. That is what the book of Revelation is. It is God pulling back the curtain of human history, pulling back the veil of our temporary, chaotic reality to reveal the masterpiece, Jesus Christ, standing victorious as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Once we grasp this, we have to look at who this book was originally written to. John didn't write this book to 21st century modern readers sitting comfortably in air-conditioned living rooms trying to decode a puzzle. He wrote it to first century Christians who were living in the Roman Empire, and they were suffering unimaginably. They were facing intense, brutal persecution under ruthless emperors. They were being marginalized, imprisoned, and killed for their faith. John himself was writing from the island of Patmos, a rocky, desolate penal colony where he had been exiled for preaching the gospel. These early believers didn't need a scary puzzle to solve. They needed a lifeline. They needed to know that their suffering wasn't meaningless and that Rome didn't have the final say. When John wrote about terrifying beasts coming out of the sea, the early Christians recognized the imagery. They were living under the oppressive beast of the Roman Empire. But the message John sent them was a triumphant one. The beast may look fierce, the dragon may roar, the world may seem like it is falling apart, but pull back the curtain. Look at who is actually on the throne. When John is invited into the heavenly throne room in Revelation chapter 5, he hears an angel announce the arrival of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. John expects to see a fierce, conquering, terrifying beast of a lion, ready to tear the enemies of God to shreds with brute force. But when he turns to look, what does he see? He sees a lamb, looking as if it had been slain. This is the beautiful, subversive irony of Revelation. God's ultimate power isn't displayed through the coercive, crushing violence of the empires of the world. It is displayed through the sacrificial, self-giving love of a lamb. That lamb is Jesus. And because that lamb was slain and has risen again, he is the only one worthy to open the scroll of human history. This means that history is not spinning out of control. It is not in the hands of corrupt politicians, greedy corporations, or unseen dark forces. The future is firmly, securely held in the nail-scarred hands of the Lamb. What does this mean for you and me today? It means that when you are going through your own dark season, when your health fails, when your bank account is empty, when your marriage is crumbling, or when the evening news makes you want to hide under the covers, you don't have to be afraid. You might be facing your own personal beasts right now. The beast of anxiety, the beast of depression, the beast of addiction, or the beast of overwhelming grief. These things roar loudly. They try to convince you that they are in charge, that chaos rules the day, and that your story is going to end in tragedy and destruction. But the book of Revelation is an invitation to pull back the curtain on your own life. It is an invitation to look past the temporary chaos and fix your eyes on the eternal reality. The message of Revelation is not a threat, it is a promise. It is the ultimate spoiler alert for the history of the universe. God wins. Love wins. The Lamb wins. And because he wins, you can have peace. You can rest, knowing that a day is coming when God himself will dwell with us. He will wipe away every tear from our eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things will pass away. Every broken thing will be made new. The next time you open the last book of the Bible, don't read it like a horror story. Read it like a love letter from a victorious king who is coming back to make all things right. Don't look for the timeline of destruction. Look for Jesus. When you find him there, standing in the center of the throne, reigning over all the chaos, you will finally find the profound, unshakable peace your heart has been desperately searching for.